everyone, I'm Sophie from C&T Publishing, and I'm also one of the contributors on the Knit and Crochet Project Planner. This is everything you need to dream, plan, and organize 12 projects. And there's so much in here, I'm going to give you a sneak peek. Now, I was lucky enough to collaborate with Carrie Graham, who did all the amazing graphics in it, and I'd love to show you what we have put together. When you open this planner, you're immediately going to see that we have a concealed wire O binding. This allows this to lay flat and to be able to easily keep your pages nice and open. So I love this kind of wired spiral binding here. Now, when you there's a nice little contents that tells you where everything is, but there's also in the first few pages on how to use it, looking at what the big picture is, your action plan, and how to track all of your different projects. This is really interactive if you're somebody who loves to like do some coloring and some and add a little like journal making. You're gonna really enjoy this, but it's fine if you're not into, you know, drawing cool pictures and things like that. You can just use it for collecting all of the data on the wonderful projects that you're creating. Now, as we go along, you're going to see more information, but now we get into the beginning part, and this is kind of, again, the big picture. So the first part is a general calendar of the year. So it starts in January, goes through December, and you can put like important events on here. Here I have local yarn store day. I have some key birthdays of people I love that I might want to make some gifts for or plan on making gifts this year for. I have a submission deadline for the county fair and possibly like a new pattern release thing, party, and some other big sales or big yarn shows that I want to go to. Here I have my action plan. So this is really taskless, and you can break out those things that you put on the other page for each month into things that you need to do. Maybe you need to start planning something ahead of time. For something that's going to happen in May. This is where you could organize those ideas. It has a due date and a completion date. Sometimes I just check it. Sometimes I write the actual completion date. But it's a really fun way to also keep track of the journey of as you're knitting and maybe doing more complicated things on where you started and where you are today. So here's the 12 project log. Now, in this planner, you're going to see there's 12 4-page project pages. So like they come in different layouts, and they are color coded. So in this case, they're kind of a rainbowish order. And I've put the titles of the ones I've started in here. Now I've got a lot of space to do a bunch more projects. And here it has a start date and a completion date. So, you know, you may be somebody like me that has a lot of works in progress, and that's okay. I love this project wheel, and as you're finishing different parts of your project, and you'll see those on the project pages, you can color them in, and I feel like it's like that, like, yay, I did it thing. So, you know, your goal is to have all your colors colored in, and I just use a color pencil, and I like to match it to the color of the project, but you can color it whatever color you want. So let's get into the project planner pages, because those are really cool. Again, each project has 4 pages that go with it. The first one has tons of project information. This is the project title, if you're using a pattern, what the pattern is, the designer, and this is going to be who it's for, maybe if they have a sensitivity to something, and maybe they have favorite colors. You're going to make a note of that in here. And then here is where, like, if the project has a size that you need, maybe has a recommended needle size. Now, if you've knitted at all, you know, just because it recommends a size doesn't mean that's the size that's going to get you your gauge for your project. So you are going to indicate what the gauge is, and then there's this really great little chart that keeps track as you're doing your gauge swatches of what needle that you use, what the gauges that you have, and then whether that's too big, too small, just right. So you're going to just go through until you get the right gauge for the right needle or hook. And then at the end, you're going to put a picture here. And I'll show you that on one of my next ones that I have finished the project. But in this case, this is the project. It's actually in progress. You can see it's a cashmere cowl. The designer is Heidi Hennessy, and it's, you know, a little herringbone cowl. So here I have put like all the different things: plan, size, colors, calculate, prep, gauge, create, assemble, weave, block, share. And you put the start date, the end date, and any notes. Here I'm putting what kinds of needles I need for the, and notions I need for the project, as well as which yarns I'm using. Now, on the next page is inspiration and swatchboard and graph it out. Now these pages really you can use however you want. One is a dotted grid and the other one is a graph paper, and I'm going to call it knitter's graph paper. It isn't a perfect square because stitches generally tend to be not as tall as they are wide. And so if you make it a real square and you're doing like a color pattern, it will look distorted from what it'll actually look like. And I'll show you that on another page as well. But in this case here, I taped a little bit of each color that I'm going to use. And then here I kind of played and I made a chart of how I want the colors to be next to each other. So I kind of made a little order of how my herringbone's gonna look, and I put the order of colors here. So I have a nice little reference if I forget which color comes next. Now on this page, I have patterns and notes, and this pattern is really quite short. So all I did is I put a copy of the pattern on the page, so I don't need to carry the pattern around. I also made some notes on some special stitches, and this pattern did not have a graph with it, but I love a graph or a chart to be able to knit from, so I just put this right here and I made a note. It's knitting in the round, 12 rounds per color. And I'm using some fun brush markers that I like to play with, and I can play with the colors, but pencils, pens, whatever you want works great. So those are the 4 pages that are per project. So on this next page, I just want to quickly show you, this is it's a great project book for if you're designing your own patterns as well. So in this case, I made this what I call Red Cross beanie, and it's just a simple beanie with a stripe in it. And I made some notes on different gauges that I wanted, mostly to find how I liked the look of the fabric. This one I've finished, and you can see I have my start dates and end dates of each step along the way. Made notes about the yarns I used. And here I kind of talked about, okay, if I'm playing with different color options, you could color some different things that I want. I really wanted to use this red color, and so I kind of played with like what would different colors look like, and I settled on this greenish brown. Here I have a really fun little quick picture of what I want my kind of motif to look like. And here I tried the motif and I didn't like how long these were. So I redid it and I made it a little shorter, and I was like, this is the one I like. So this is really a 6-row pattern. Now again, if this was actually true squares, this motif would look a lot bigger, but then it would shrink up when I actually knit it. So that's why we use this type of graph paper that's not perfect squares. So those are my 4 pages for that, and then I have another project in process. Now I'm going to skip ahead to the tracking logs, and here we have things you can track like gift trackers, charity projects, knit-alongs, classes, retreats. It's got a great retreat packing list in here. One of my favorite things in here is my knitting needle inventory, and it's good for crochet. It has crochet hooks too, because this is really meant for knitters and crocheters. Here I keep track of all the different needles I have. That way if I bring this with me to the yarn store, I'm not trying to remember, do I have a size 13, 24-inch needle? No, I don't. Or yes, I have like 3 of these here. So it's a great way of keeping track of what you have so you don't end up buying things you already have. Here it has hooks too, so you can keep track of all the different crochet hooks you have as well. I also keep track here of interchangeable sets I have. And here's some things on my favorite books. There's a contact section with yarn shops, your yarn friends, and then in the back is a really great reference section. This has common knitting and crochet terms, common symbols. Here's a bunch of crochet abbreviations and symbols. I love a good crochet chart, so I love this part. Knitting abbreviations and knitting symbols. Again, I love charts, and includes cables. And And then we have the just standard yarn weight system here. There's some really great references on how to measure people when you're sizing them, and then a nice little note on why it's so important to do your gauge swatch. And at the end, it shows different knitting needles and crochet sizes metric to US size ranges. So there is a lot in this book. What is amazing too about this book is they run at $19.95. That is less than $2 a project if you're just looking at just the project pages alone, and you get quality paper that takes ink and pencil really well, and you could, you know, put a little label here. You could have a bunch of these on your shelf of all your different projects you're working on. This is part of a bigger series of planners that C&T has. It started off with the Quilters Project Planner. This is a great one for quilters. Then next came the Knit and Crochet Planner that I just showed you. And then we also have the Embellished Art Embroidery Planner. This is great for embroidery projects. There's more planners coming in the future as well, and you can find all of these at ctpub.com.